don't know what you have. Do you think you're getting honest numbers from some of these countries? Do you really believe those numbers in this vast country called China, and that they have a certain number of cases and a certain number of deaths? Does anybody really believe that? Here's the story. We report everything. We're reporting the cases, and our reporting is good. We're reporting every death. In fact, I see this morning where New York added 3,000 deaths because they died, and they're now saying, rather than it was a heart attack, they're saying it was a heart attack caused by this. So they're adding. If you look at it, that's it. And everything we have is documented, reported. And what they are doing is, just in case, they're calling it this, and that's okay. That's okay. But we have more cases because we do more reporting. We have more cases because everything is down. But does anybody really believe the numbers of some of these countries that you've been watching and you've been reporting on? And then it's like they didn't have the big thing. There have been some really, really bad, heavily in really some countries that are in big, big trouble. And they're not reporting the facts. And that's up to them. All I know is we report the facts, and we're a country that's getting better. John?
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, we're going to take a look at the latest new Q posts. Yes, we have a lot of information to cover. Q is, again, pulling back the veil and uncovering what is actually going on. You guys got to stick around to check that out. Plus, we're going to look at all the breaking news stories that you need to hear about that the mainstream media won't talk about. So we're going to cover all that plus a whole lot more. So stick around and check it out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm your host, Craig. You guys know I say thanks. If you've hit that subscribe button, if you haven't done it, come on, what are you waiting for? Come here, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications, then select all, so you get notified as soon as all of these videos get posted. Today, we're picking up right where we left off. We left off at Q Post 3971. We're picking up at 3972, and we have a lot of information to cover. We're going to check out the latest Q Posts and a bunch of breaking news stories, especially having to do with Bill Gates and this pandemic. A few things we're going to talk about specifically there, and we're going to look at a bunch of other stuff, so you guys are going to stick around for that. But before we get started, I want to remind everybody this video is brought to you in part by Brave Browser. If you guys haven't downloaded it yet, you got to try it. It's free. You can download it using the link in the description, install it, and run it on your computer, and it will replace your internet browser, and it's a better browser. It's blocking the ads, and it's making your internet experience that much better. So check it out using the link in the description to download it today for free, install it, and run it on your computer. You guys are going to love it. It's going to replace your internet browser, and it's a better product. So with that, let's get into the latest Q posts. We have 3972 right where we're picking up, and it's this NPR link, which we're going to look at, that says the transcript and video of NPR's exit interview with President Obama. Now, what's interesting in this piece is what Q points us directly to, saying, think then, think now, start at 1540, and then knowingly, Q. So let's take a look at this clip. And of course, remember, this is Hussein's exit interview. He was still in office at the time. This is his last interview with NPR. It's an hour long before he leaves office. And listen specifically to what Q is pointing us to. I'm going to play this clip, and then we're going to talk about it.
You talked about this with the comedian Trevor Noah the other day, and you said a number of things in a row. You observed that there had been contacts between members of Mr. Trump's staff and Russian officials. Right. You noted that Trump benefited from the hacks. Your spokesman, Josh Earnest, has gone on to say this week that it's obvious that Trump knew what was going on. To what extent are you suggesting some kind of cooperation between the president-elect and Russian officials here?
Well, I'm not suggesting cooperation at all. Keep in mind that those statements were in the context of everyone now acting surprised by the CIA assessment that this was done purposely to improve Trump's chances. And my only point was that shouldn't be treated as a blockbuster because that was the worst kept secret in this town. Everybody understood that. It was reported on. Steve, if you go back and look at your stories, if you read any mainstream publication, you would see that if you have a hack of the DNC and a hack of Hillary Clinton's most senior advisor's emails, and those things are then released in drip, drip, drip fashion over the course of months, and that seemed to generate consistently negative coverage, despite the fact that there's nothing in there that's particularly controversial, that it's mostly just, as I said, political gossip or routine emails between folks who are working in a campaign environment, then it's a pretty clear inference that people would draw and did draw that this was helping the Trump campaign and it was hurting the Hillary campaign. That doesn't mean that the Trump campaign was coordinating. It just means that they understood what everybody else understood, which was that this was not good for Hillary Clinton's campaign. And
so think about this. What Q is telling us is to think about what was being told to NPR by the president back then, as opposed to with all the information we know now. He's telling us right here that, oh, well, it was obvious that the CIA's assessment that President Trump was being helped by the Russians is true. Well, if that is the case, then why was our CIA and other organizations, including the FBI and the DOJ, being weaponized against President Trump actively by your administration, Hussein? Why was that happening? Why, did Carter Page get set up for that FISA abuse? Why was George Papadopoulos being set up for an interview at a bar to talk about, things to an Australian diplomat who then turned around and started this investigation into Trump without any prerequisite? Why is it that now, knowing that the Steele dossier has been completely debunked and that they knew it was unverified even when you were president, sir, why now are you turning, did you tell us back then that it was obvious that it was true, right? This, and then talking about the emails and how they weren't a big deal and there wasn't anything in them. How about the spirit cooking? How about the let's arrange for children to be dropped off at your pool, John Podesta, to hang out with? How about the whole, wet works at the vineyard? Think about these things. Nobody wants to talk about all that, but think about it. That's what Q wants us to look at. Knowingly, that's the real question. If you're knowingly involved in this stuff, that's where we're really coming to in this whole thing. So the next post is Q giving us this Twitter post, which says, quote, "With the steps I ordered last month, we are speeding up the training of ISIS forces with Sunni volunteers," unquote, Obama. So Freudian slip, or was he just telling us this, outright? You tell me, you be the judge. Watch this.
As I've said before, this aspect of our strategy was moving too slowly, but the fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province.
But don't worry, nothing to see here. Don't believe your lying eyes or your lying ears when it comes to this, visual evidence of what happened in the past. Just ignore that and continue to believe the narrative that MSNBC and CNN want to force into you with the help of the big tech fascists who want to brainwash you and manipulate you and spy on you to basically obtain all of the data they can about you to use it to enrich themselves at your expense. Don't worry about anything that's happening here. Please go back to sleep. But then Q asks the question, who trained and supplied ISIS? What if HRC had won? Who destroyed ISIS? Knowledge is power, Q. These are scary questions, in my opinion, right? The answers to these questions, once the public is aware, in my opinion, this is why we have this national security issue at hand. This is why these people put us in such a vulnerable position. This is why Q told us at the beginning of all this that some of this may never even be able to come out. Now, I'm not saying that this particular piece of information or the answers to these questions will never get exposed in full transparency, but I can tell you right now, some of these questions have very disturbing answers, possibly. And I, for one, want to know who trained and supplied ISIS. Well, it seems as though I hopefully will be having a guest on here very soon, a very high-ranking military officer who has direct experience with this issue. It seems as though there may have been some kind of facilitation of weapons trafficking going on. There may have been a few blind eyes turned with regard to the top command. I'm not talking about the patriots who are in there, who are active on the ground. I'm talking about the top of the top, the people who are issuing the main orders. See, that's the problem with a lot of this stuff, is that there's a lot of good men that get tangled up in this sick and evil plot. And that's really, and good men and women, I should say. So that's really what this is all about. But what if HRC had won? I mean, I've heard, and I tend to believe, that it is very possible that if she had won, there were certain members of our government and our military who were ready to, let's just say, change the course of history with, legally and lawfully, I should say. Because if half of the stuff that we're seeing here, right, and Q is alluding to is true, I mean, even a fraction of it, even though we tend to believe that the vast majority of it is going to end up being verified, this changes the whole game. And there are so many people who are asleep still, and that's why it's our job to keep waking them up. But I hear more and more every day about people waking up to this, getting their family members to see it for what it is. And there's some things that are helping with that. There are people who are helping all across the board, all social media. And that's why Q told us they're going to start shutting us down. And they've already started. They started with InfoWars. Now, I'm not a big fan of InfoWars since a lot of the things have come out. But at the same time, regardless of what you think of that organization and what they do, the fact that they're having their voices removed, they're having their personas kicked off of, profiles taken off of all social media platforms, that's just them setting the stage for us. Because if we continue to allow them to just remove anyone that we may even slightly disagree with or not follow as closely, then they're like, okay, well, they don't react to that, so let's go for this. Let's keep shifting the window, right? Shifting the goalposts, as you will, or if you will, to continue to take out more and more of these pro-POTUS accounts, people who are believing in President Trump and who have large followings that push for, truth and transparency, the two things that seem to, terrify these big companies more than anything. And how did President Trump destroy ISIS so quickly when it was allowed to seemingly grow endlessly without any sort of resistance for 8 years? Knowledge is power. That's what I think. So the next one is even more disturbing, if you can even imagine that, which almost equally, I guess, would be the better way to put it. Here is Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, an older post from 2006 where he says, making the good pasta, reading through some amazing parts of the satanic verses, the golden threads begin to intertwine. So I'm not sure what to make of this other than, look, we know what pasta means, right? We've seen enough of these code words that are used to refer to stuff that is involved in human trafficking, child sex trafficking, etc. So we know that that is an odd reference to be making. Maybe he's just eating pasta, and perhaps there's something more to that. Now, the Satanic Verses is a book by Salman Rushdie, which was very controversial when it was released, and it basically portrayed Muhammad in some very negative way that they didn't like when they heard the Muslim community at large. And they basically said they were going to kill this Salman Rushdie for putting this out there. But I also have to ask, there's another form of verses that are from the Church of Satan that could have been being referenced here. So, it's to say that you're reading through some amazing parts of the Satanic Verses because Salman Rushdie's book is basically a novel in the way that it's written. It wouldn't be something you'd pick up and just start reading random chapters out of, I wouldn't imagine. I would imagine that if you're going to find some amazing parts of a set of verses, this is referring most likely to something other than that. Now, of course, a part of Satanism, Luciferianism, is that they have to show you that they are evil and that they are worshiping Satan. That's a part of their belief system. And of course, they veil it, they hide it, they try to put it into different things. But this is just something to look at way more closely. As Q has told us in the past, these people are sick and evil, and I'm not sure what to say other than we know what Jack Dorsey's been doing for quite some time with this platform. We know that he's involved in that big tech cabal of fascists who want to shut down free speech and silence any dissenting opinions because they ultimately think they know better than you. They're smarter than you, they're better than you, and they have more knowledge about the world than you, and that their view is the moral view, and that you are basically the opposite of that. You are immoral, you are unintelligent, you are unable to formulate your own thoughts or have freedom of thought. They'll tell you what you can think, they'll tell you what you can say, and they'll do and what they want because they have more money, i.e. more power than you. But what they don't understand, first of all, is that we have God on our side, which makes us way more powerful regardless. But we also have the truth, and we have integrity and honesty and righteousness, and we will prevail regardless of what happens. Remember, the Bible tells us God wins. So I just thought that was interesting. And Q says it will be your choice whether to know. So yeah, that's what it is. Ultimately, we all have a choice to make in this. And you can go back to sleep, take the blue pill. None of this will have ever happened. You'll wake up, you'll go back to your daily life as the people that you don't see control every part of what you do and how you think and how you act. Or you could take the red pill and you can wake up and you can realize that we collectively can stand up to this evil and we can defeat it as long as we put our faith in God and trust that He will lead us on the right path to saving humanity. And that's what I choose to do. So your choice is your choice. Now, the next one was interesting. Q told us to clear our mind and gave us a link to this YouTube song, which is Above and Beyond by this band or this group, I guess, called Great Falls. And interesting, one of the Anons pointed out that the album they put out has 17 tracks and is 50 minutes long and is at 432 megahertz frequency, I think, which is supposedly, if you get into all that, there's frequencies and levels that you can, hear that kind of calm yourself and all that, which I don't doubt at all. I think a lot of that stuff is very valid and has a lot of scientific, research behind it, but I'm not an expert at it, so I'm not going to claim to really know other than that it is important to remember what you consume culturally is also important. You have to filter that. It's just like that movie Out of Shadows. Now, yes, we were going to have one of the creators of that documentary Out of Shadows on the show, but they, I guess, had a timing issue and couldn't come on. So that's been postponed until a later date. We're still working on that. But I may have a big guest coming on, like I said before, for an interview that is going to knock your socks off, let's just say, I think. So let's go ahead and move on to the next post because Q says, clear your mind, heal Q. Now remember, HCQ is the basically abbreviation for hydroxychloroquine. And Q reminds us of that in the next few posts we'll look at. But the next post here is Twitter, and this is a post from Lotus Oak 2. Now, what is this? This is a clip from Laura Ingram's show where they talk about using the medicine hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin as a combination to treat COVID-19 patients. And this doctor tells us that it's a complete game changer and that he's seen an incredible uptick in people getting better and not having to be intubated through the use of this medication. Now, don't forget, President Trump was just in India. What was he doing in India? Also, among other things, he's had negotiations afterward, talks with India afterward, to secure a constant supply of hydroxychloroquine. This is a drug, right, mind you, that if it was only being produced in a country like China or mass produced in a country like China, then China could have used the withholding of that drug as a form of warfare, biological warfare at that. Because if you make something a bioweapon when you have a virus and you're withholding the necessary antibiotics and medicines to heal us from it. Now, President Trump's come out and said it's very promising. I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. I'm not telling you to take anything. I'm just saying we're being told to look at this. And apparently on most social medias, people are getting kicked off and banned just for talking about it. So, whatever on that, we have freedom of speech in this country. we as American citizens can talk about this still. We don't live in communist China. We're not there yet, although they're doing their best to change it. But this clip is very interesting in what it reveals. And the doctor saying it's an absolute game changer and that he thinks this is the beginning of the end of the pandemic is something that goes right into what Q's telling us in the next post, right? Q says worth tracking. And this is an older post from President Trump on March 21st of this year saying hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin taken together have a real chance to be one of the biggest game changers in the history of medicine. The FDA has moved mountains. Thank you. Hopefully they will both. H works better with A, International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents. So think about it. If this treatment does help heal people who are suffering from this virus that is now coming out, we just saw it on the finally making the national news now that, oh yeah, it probably was a bioweapon or at least a virus that was being amplified inside of a level 4 bio research facility in Wuhan that got out because one of the workers, accidentally got it and then gave it to his girlfriend who went to the wet market, and that's how it started spreading. Okay, well, yeah, that's really a convenient way for an amplified virus to escape a bioweapons research facility. Presumably, that's what this facility was doing. What other reason would you have besides, the obvious? They go, oh, well, we're just creating these deadly pathogens so that we can figure out ways to cure them in case we have a global epidemic with one that gets out naturally. Well, you manufacturing deadly pathogens that have these gain of function, qualities that make them very contagious and very deadly. You researching and creating those is the danger, right? I mean, it's kind of like which one is worse, right? You're researching it to try to stop it if it happens naturally, but then your facility is not even secure enough to contain it. So that's really the question. And, the mainstream media, they won't talk about any of this. They only talk about it when they're forced to. And that's where it seems to be where we're at. So the next one here, and of course, like just pointing that tweet is something to keep an eye on, I guess Q's telling us. The next one, in reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. And that's exactly what it is, right? President Trump telling us every time that he's doing this for us. And I believe that wholeheartedly. There's nothing for him to gain by putting himself in the position that he has been in for the last 3 years. If anything, it's cost him an incredible amount of not just wealth, but time and his social status, you name it. But we should be thankful that God put us in a position to have a leader who's going to help us, I think. And if that makes me crazy, if that makes me, a conspiracy theorist, then what are we even fighting for in this country if we can't have faith in a president? If we can't have faith in, the people to do the right thing once we continue to expose this evil? I mean, that's what we have. We have God first and foremost above all that. So, that's, I guess, what we're fighting for regardless. But the next one, too, of course, is Q. Somebody on Twitter was putting this around CHQ, hydroxychloroquine, or chloroquine, I guess would be the other way to look at it. CHQ, chloroquine. There you go. So think about that. The next one here, renegade, a person who deserts and betrays an organization, country, or set of principles. Synonyms: traitor, defector, deserter, turncoat, rebel, mutineer. Never forget that this was a self-appointed nickname that Obama gave himself to be called by the Secret Service. That's how that works. So that'd be something to look at more closely, wouldn't you say? So finally, here's this Twitter post from Q says, "Together we win, where we go one, we go all." And of course, it is this "will win again" saying, "Happy birthday, brother." And it was a video of these two saying, "Where we go one, we go all," from Los Angeles, California. And thank you for representing Southern California. I'm here with you guys in Southern California. We're on the front lines of this, I think. And what we're doing collectively is working to take this country back, to make America great again, and to save as many people as we can from all of this out there that's evil. We're bringing light onto the dark, and we're doing our best to make sure that we help as many people as we can. And with that, I can kind of announce, I think I just got confirmation here during the video, that I will be having a special guest coming up. Hopefully the interview will go through, but it will be with a retired Major General Paul Vallely, who is one of the people who has been actually coming out with information about Q and other things for quite some time, been exposing a lot of the issues in government, and is a patriot. So we're going to have an interview with him coming up. You guys are going to want to stick around to check out that on the channel. I'll be posting that within the next couple days, hopefully. And finally, we'll go through a few news stories. First of all, one of the Anons found this. An older George magazine. You guys remember this magazine, George, that was created by JFK Jr. shortly before his mysterious death from an airplane crash. And this issue, apparently, it's a survival guide to the future that features an interview with Bill Gates, who talks about John Kennedy, Rupert Murdoch, money, and world domination. And here's a quote that's highlighted in the magazine article talking about disease, saying the worst case scenario, according to Bill Gates, is an overpopulated planet choked to extinction by a lung-attacking virus. Now, this magazine, I believe, was issued in the 90s, early 90s. So we have to really start asking some questions about how this is all happening, right? And how, at what point is it just too much of a coincidence? Because now you have, when an organization like the Daily Beast comes out and starts calling you a conspiracy theorist for talking about somebody, that probably means you're on the right path. You're probably getting close to the truth. And so they've come out and said that rumors and conspiracy theories about Bill Gates have boomed on social media. He's been wrongly accused. So I love how they say wrongly accused. There's not much proof really provided, just to say that we're all part of this crazy stuff that's going on. But wrongly accused of everything from plotting out the coronavirus pandemic to distributing plush souvenir toys to celebrate the virus death toll. Yeah, that's interesting. And now, of course, you have the New York Times coming out with the article, Bill Gates at odds with Trump on virus becomes a right-wing target. And of course, all the meanwhile, Bill and Melinda Gates talking to Business Insider about how they've been storing food in their basement for years in anticipation of a pandemic. But nothing to see here. You're a conspiracy theorist if you think for 1 second that there's anything suspicious about a billionaire who's been obsessed with diseases his whole life finally stepping down from his position at Microsoft after after the company gained a multi-billion-dollar contract over its competitor, Amazon. So remember this. Amazon now wants to question Trump because they lost their $10 billion contract bid. Now, what was this contract bid? It was awarded for a project that was called crucial to advancing the U.S. military's technological advantage over its adversaries. Now, what is this referring to? This is referring to, obviously, here we are, Bill Gates leaving Microsoft and then Microsoft getting the contract. Amazon wants to Trump, and then Amazon, of course, now wants Trump to testify about military contract awarded to Microsoft. So that contract was then awarded to Microsoft, but shortly before, or after that, I should say, Bill Gates was forced to leave, I think, his company, Microsoft. So the military takes this multi-billion-dollar contract from Amazon, they give it to Microsoft, and then Bill Gates is forced to resign shortly thereafter. Do you see a pattern happening here? Do you think President Trump has power behind the scenes that nobody's talking about? Perhaps the power to seize some of these globalist-controlled institutions, and that upon them losing their in with the government, whatever it was that was keeping them in the position of being able to coerce and get these, or obtain, however you want to call it, these contracts, these lucrative military contracts, that once they lose that, you see a global pandemic virus that just spreads. It's an interesting set of coincidences. So if you're paying attention, Amazon loses the contract. Microsoft gets it. Bill Gates is forced out. And all the meanwhile, in the time between, there's a global pandemic that was predicted by the man who may or may not have been forced to step down from Microsoft after it was taken over, or after it was granted a $10 billion contract from the government. I don't know. We might be onto something here. Papadopoulos reacting to declassification of Spygate transcripts, saying Durham knows who sent Clinton errand boy to meet me with me in London. Of course, we know that, and it's obvious now more and more. But again, if you think of that clip we watched at the beginning of this episode, what did President Obama know? When did he know it? Is really important. Because if he knew what we think he knew at the times that it seems to be pointing that he did know, or that his top administrative officials knew, then they're looking very guilty at a setup of President Trump, an attempted coup, if you will, of the President of the United States. And of course, if you think about that, the latest FISA declassification that's coming out is continuing to drop bombshell after bombshell. There's a huge amount of information that's being deciphered through right now that talks about the confidential human sources that were used to set up President Trump's campaign associates and others. And here is seemingly a conversation that's been redacted to exclude the mentioning of the former DNC staffer, Seth Rich, who mysteriously lost his life shortly after the leak of the emails. And it was alluded to by Julian Assange that he may have been the original source for that information that exposed all of the things that Obama and his administration of officials turned around and blamed Russia for. I think we might be onto something. So that's pretty much where I'm going to go ahead and leave it. I'll leave links to everything down in the description if you want to check that out. A few more things before we go. Come here, watch these videos. You guys are breaking the content suppression algorithm by watching these videos and sharing them. So keep doing it and leave your thoughts, theories, and insights below. I want to hear what you guys have to think about everything. Also, you can find me over here on Twitter at JustInformedU. That's the Twitter account. And you can also come find me over here on JustInformedNews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk. BitChute.com/JustInformed Talk is the backup channel. And a couple of the ways you can contribute are both financial. There's Patreon, Patreon.com. It's a crowdfunding website. It's a monthly donation. And you guys keep this channel working because they fully demonetized this channel. And, they've done everything they can to put it out of business. But your monthly support here helps keep it alive. I honestly could not do this without you. So without you guys supporting this work, it just wouldn't get done. I just wouldn't have the ability to do it. So thank you. And if you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation, I have a GoFundMe set up. Links to everything that we've talked about here will be in the description of the video. Now, before we go, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And this verse talks about the importance of God's grace and how it should be treated like a treasure. And I just want to share these words. It's out of 2 Corinthians. We've been in here for a little bit, but there's so much good inspirational word in here. I want to share this with you. It's chapter 4, verse 15 through 18. It says, "For all this is because of you, so that grace extended through more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to God's glory. Therefore, we do not give up, even though our outer person is being destroyed. Our inner person is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So we do not focus on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." So think about that. What are we really doing here? We're suffering in this temporary affliction, as it says, because it is helping us appreciate and continue to devote our lives to what is unseen. And what is unseen is eternal. And that's our eternal salvation that we've been given through the sacrifice made on the cross for our sins. And my prayer for you is that we can all help each other. As it says here, it says it better than I can say it, but for all this is because of you, so that grace extended through more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to God's glory. So every time we share the word of God, we can extend that grace and extend the glorification of God through others. So it's really important that, when you hear these words, if they really touch your heart, if they make you want to do something positive and help make the world a better place, you can find a way through prayer, through, studying the scripture, through sharing the gospel and doing unto others and living righteously and doing the right thing when no one's looking. These are the ways that we can help others. And there's guidance, and you can gain wisdom, and you can gain all of the blessings that God has in store for you just by opening your heart up and saying a prayer and starting that conversation and working hard every day to honor God and live righteously. And you can do it for yourself, but most importantly, you should do it for others. That's the whole point. So that's my message to you. I hope you guys share it with your family, friends, and loved ones and get it out there. But that's going to be it for me. Remember to come here, hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications. Also hit it, punch it, tap it, elbow it, whatever. Hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. But that's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.